Welcome to the Standard Deviations podcast, presented by Orion Advisor Solutions and hosted by Dr. Daniel Crosby, Orion's Chief Behavioral Officer and New York Times best-selling author. Today's investors expect more than a transaction. They want a relationship. Show how your firm merges EQ and IQ with Orion's V-Fi 20, a new shareable assessment developed by Dr. Daniel Crosby that provides you with emotional and attitudinal insights into clients to facilitate more meaningful investing conversations from day one. Get started today at orion.com/B-Fi20.
Hello and welcome to the Standard Deviations podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Daniel Crosby, and I'm joined today live from Ascent by our afternoon keynote, Ben Nemtin. Ben is a #1 New York Times bestselling author, co-founder of the Buried Life movement, and an inspirational keynote speaker. He's delivered over 500 keynotes to brands and Fortune 500 companies around the globe. Welcome to the show, man.
Thank you.
Great to have you here in sunny Orlando. So I'm a big believer in your mission, right? Stoicism. Heidegger talked about, what's the greatest way to improve your life? He said, spend more time in graveyards. I'm a great believer in a contemplation of our finitude can be a great way to sort of energize life. But we're going to start at the beginning. We'll pick up your story in college where you're going to school playing rugby when you're hit with a crippling bout of anxiety and depression that effectively makes you a shut-in in your parents' house. You had a realization then about the root cause of that depression. Tell us what that realization was and what you did next.
Yeah, so I think in hindsight, I could say that I can see why I was starting to feel suppressed and depressed and anxious. In the moment, it was very hard for me to understand why I was feeling like this. I'd never been through any type of mental health crisis in my life, and so it was extremely terrifying. I dropped out of school. Got dropped from the national rugby team. I was on the U19, which is the under-19 rugby team. And one thing that I did, which was kind of by necessity, was I decided to try and only surround myself with people that inspired me, that gave me energy versus drew energy from me. And that small decision would ultimately change the course of my life, because I actively sort of took a risk and called this kid that I didn't know very well and asked him if he wanted to make a documentary. And that started this Buried Life mission, which was really a documentary about all of our buried dreams, which stemmed from the name of a poem that my friend was assigned to an English class called The Buried Life, that talked about the same feeling that we were feeling, which was that we felt buried. We had all these things that we wanted to do, but we'd never done any of them because life got in the way. So we made this list of these buried dreams, and we thought, let's go on a road trip and try and accomplish as many as we can, but let's also help other people achieve their bucket list items. And we'll do a 2-week road trip, and we'll make a short film, and it'll be fun to show our friends. Yeah. So what we didn't realize, or what was unexpected, was that as we started to travel, people wanted to help. Strangers wanted to help. They wanted us to cross all these things off. They wanted to help with their dreams. And so this 2-week road trip lasted 10 or 15 years.
So what was that transition like? Because that doesn't happen all at once. At what point does this 2-week road trip get legs, I guess? At what point do you say, yeah, this is going to be a longer thing?
Well, I think too, I also don't want to sort of skim over the kind of coming out of the depression. I don't want to minimize, or I don't want to just say that it's as easy to come out of a hard time as just deciding to go after your bucket list. But what I have found is there's this real connection between purpose and your mental health. Mm-hmm. And what I realize now in hindsight is a bucket list was just a device for me to, for the first time in my life, write down the things that I wanted and start living the life that I wanted versus the life that I thought I should be living, right? Yeah. So one of the reasons that I've hit any type of depression in my life, I've realized that it's in part because I'm not being authentic to who I am in some major part of my life. At that point, I realized that upon reflection, that I actually was playing rugby because it was like football in the South. It was the thing to do. I actually didn't really love playing it. I was going into medical school because I thought that that's what you should do. I had an academic scholarship, but I wasn't allowing myself to express this creative expression, which ultimately would lead me down this buried life path, which really was more true to who I am. So this whole bucket list thing has really been a journey of self-discovery. And I think that when people are true to who they are, they're more powerful and they create a bigger impact. I believe that we all have gifts that only we can unlock, but a lot of times we're afraid to do those things, right? We're afraid what other people think. We're afraid of failure. We're waiting to feel inspired to go after those things. And there's really no deadlines to achieve these goals, so we continually push them. But those are the regrets that you have at the end of your life, is not doing those things. And so I've realized there's this connection between giving yourself permission to do these things that you love, big or small, and your well-being. And the most important thing that I've done as relates to coming out of any type of struggle is talking with a professional, a therapist. So I don't want to minimize that. Like, that I think is the most important. But I do think there's a big piece of this that I think people are unhappy because they're not giving themselves permission to do the things that they love and follow those passions, because that energizes them to be the best version of themselves. And ultimately, that's when you thrive.
Yeah. So, we just are out of a couple of sessions earlier today where we talked about the power of purpose for financial planning. Of note, one study from your home country of Canada found that people who put purpose front and center saved twice as much for retirement as those who did not. They found they were 10 to 12 times less likely to go to cash during a bad market. And the other thing we found is that a lot of times we're sort of reworking our goal setting process, because we found that a lot of goals are sort of mimetic. They're sort of cribbing off of other people or living someone else's life. And we're trying to anchor to values first, and then to goals, and then to behaviors, because you really got to get down to those first principles of who am I, what matters to me, and have your whole financial, professional, personal life flow from that. So one of the best parts of your story is that it isn't just this hedonistic pursuit of 100 things that you and your buddies wanted to do. You're helping other people realize their dreams too. Along this path, what are some of the coolest things you've helped to bring about in others' lives?
So I think that's been the most fun part, helping other people, not only because you get to help them, but you get to share this moment that means so much to them, and you build this really quick, meaningful connection because you're experiencing this thing that means so much to them in their life. So that is such a cool, rare experience. So some of the things that I have really stuck with me, we helped a girl that was born with one hand get a bionic hand, and we surprised her with a robotic hand. That her friends really started this momentum by starting a hashtag on Twitter. The first person we helped was a guy named Brent who lived in a homeless shelter, and we helped him get a truck so he could start a landscaping business, and stayed in touch with him after that and got him to finish his GED and get his diploma, and then sort of continue to stay in touch and really support him. But I do think something that you mentioned is really important, which is I think the younger generation cares more about experience and purpose and passion than the older generation. Actually, that's not even the best way to say it. I think they're maybe more in tune with that this is important to them. I think it's important for everyone to do, but I think we're a little more liberated to see the return on that now. And as advisors, your job is really a dream facilitator or a dream manager. So I think it's intuitive to have a conversation with your clients around a bucket list or dreams or passions or goals, because really, as I said, it's a super highway to connection. You're going to be understanding who this person is, and not only that, but then you can actually keep them accountable to those things. So it doesn't just need to be their financial goals, but like, what are they trying to do in their life? And because you have this touch point with them, and we're missing accountability with these personal goals, you can be that accountability partner. Or if you know that they're building their dream house, you can check in and say, how's that coming? Or if you know they want to run a marathon, you can check in and say, hey, how's training going? And that's going to drive them forward. And then they're going to partly associate that win with you. And as you said, like understanding someone's values and enabling them to be the best version of themselves. I mean, that's really what you're doing. You're feeding that growth into that person, that by supporting them financially and being able to create a financial future that allows them to thrive. And so I think that it's a really good POV to have at the very least, just to build a relationship with your clients.
Yeah. So I love that idea of financial advisors as a dream facilitator. I can promise you that's going to get used by a lot of the people who are listening to this, because I think it's spot on. I'm writing another book right now, and one of the areas of study that fascinates me is the study of sort of enough, right? The kind of things that sate us, the things that make us happy for real, versus just sort of this fleeting, illusory version of happiness or sufficiency. Over the past 10 years, you've done all these incredible things. You've hooped with President Obama. You've made people's dreams come true. You were on Oprah. Like, what things did you find were enough? What things did you find really scratched that itch of deep meaning? And were there any things that weren't maybe as good as you thought they would be?
I think the thing that resonated the most was just doing all that stuff with my friends.
Yeah.
And experiencing that with people that I love and had a really fun time with. And even to this day, that's, so I really want people to rethink what a bucket list is. So it's not just adventure and travel. And I try and get people to think of 10 categories of life when they think about their list. So it is adventure and travel, and those are great list items, but it's also relationships. It's intellectual. Like, what do you want to learn? Mental health, physical health, creativity. How do you want to give back? So you want to sort of think of a holistic list, and you look at the top 5 regrets of the dying, which is, Bronnie Ware was a palliative care nurse. She wrote this book called Top 5 Regrets of the Dying. He also is consistent with Dr. Gilovich's research out of Cornell when they talk about regrets at the end of your life. Like, the biggest regret we have at the end of our life, they don't stem from regrets from things we did. They come from things we didn't do. And the single biggest regret is, I wish I would have lived for me versus someone else. And a lot of these regrets are like, I wish I would have stayed in contact with friends. I wish I would have told people how I really feel. These don't cost any money, right? These are just things that we are either afraid to do, or we feel like we have all this time and we realize too late that we don't. Yeah. And that's why, coming back to Stoicism, like, it's so great to think about your death, because it put things in perspective. And the question that we asked ourselves and everybody was, what do you want to do before you die? Because in Mila, death was the only thing that actually made us realize that we had to think about these things. Like, if we're not going to be here, what do we want to do with the time left? And we don't think about death enough. And we tend to minimize these personal goals. And I really think it's not selfish. It's actually service. Because if you're saying to yourself, you know what, like, I have these things I want to do, but I don't have time. I got too much on my plate. I also have a family. I also have this is going on. And I'm not saying you have to quit your job and get an RV and travel around the country for 10 years. But what I am saying is, how much time can you afford to dedicate to one thing that is important to you that you will regret not doing on your deathbed? And that could be spending more time with your kids. That could be building a better relationship with your dad. That could be, skydiving over the Alps. Yeah. It really, there's no rules. The only rule is that it's important to you, and that it brings you back to who you truly authentically are, which means you don't necessarily follow your head and think, what do I want to do? You follow feelings, right? What energizes you when you do that thing? What makes you feel more alive? Follow creativity, right? Or what excites you when you think about it. And so I really believe that those power you to be the best financial advisor, because if you're talking with your clients about these things and asking them about what's on your list or what are things you're passionate about, I also think it's great to share the things that are important to you, so that you actually, it's a two-way street where you're being open and vulnerable and saying, hey, this is something that I would love to do, and I'm working on this as well. And, I think that it's not as hard as you might think to help your clients achieve these things outside of the hitting the financial goals. Because maybe you've run a marathon and you might say, have you tried this training app? Or maybe you've, built a house and you say, hey, this is a great contractor that I use. Like, you never know how you can help someone.
Yeah. I love a couple of things about your comments. The first, all the positive psychology research is with you, that relationships are one of the key, if not the foremost key, to real sort of enduring wellness and happiness. So sometimes I think it's less about, what do you want to do, and more about who do you want to do it with, right? Yeah. And I think I also love that piece about sort of that two-way street. The way we bring about vulnerability in people is by first becoming vulnerable ourselves. So as we share with our clients, disclose to them what our dreams were, how we've kind of helped to bring those to pass in our own lives and in the lives of the people we serve, I think that's a powerful thing. So my last question, we got to get you to the stage, my guy. But my last question here is your website. I hope it's up to date. Your website says you currently sit at 91 of your original 100 bucket list items that have been completed. What remains to be done? And what do you think it'll feel like when you cross that 100th thing off the list?
Good question. I mean, first off, my website, I guess, is not up to date because it's 96 at the moment. Go to Space is number 100. Make a movie. We started Buried Life to make a documentary. We thought it would take 2 weeks. 15 years later, we are and now actively starting to put that together, which I'm really excited about. Really close to signing a contract with a space tourism company, which will be really cool for 2025. And the other ones I think are host Saturday Night Live and cover of Rolling Stone, which those are big ones.
Yeah.
But I know. So your question was like, how do you think I will fit? How will I feel when I cross the 100th? I honestly, and I think this is a bigger point, probably no different because I've added many, many more, and it's not really about the accomplishments. Yeah. It's a constant journey to be true to who you are, and the list is just an ever-evolving reflection of what that is. Yeah. So the first 100 are almost ceremonial. Like, it's fun and it's cool to think about crossing those off, but you know, I've taken things off the list that don't align with, as you said, my values. Like when I was, in my early 20s, I wanted to streak a field and get away. We did it. I don't want to do that anymore. So right. There's like a constant, that's why when I think like what you want to do is you want to write your list in a journal, not on a piece of paper, not on an app. You want to have a safe place where you come back to these dreams and update them, right? My new book is called The Bucket List Journal, which is effectively your accountability buddy, where you write your list in those 10 categories and then you start to build accountability. Like you want to choose an accountability buddy. You're 77% more likely to achieve your goal if you have someone checking in with you or sending regular updates. Enroll someone into that, share your goals because then you feel accountable to them, set a deadline, set a reward for yourself. All of these things can help drive you forward. And check in every couple months so that you're really on track with these things that are important to you, because time moves quickly, right? And before we know it, we could be in the 76% of the population that is on their deathbed realizing that they messed up and they blew it and they didn't take time to think about the small things that were important to them. Yeah.
Great perspective. Less about checking off some arbitrary list of things, more about enjoying the journey and making sure whatever list you're working on is an accurate reflection of who you are at that moment. You've got a ton of great resources. If people want to find you or learn more about your writing, your Instagram, where can folks find you?
Yeah, probably Instagram is my most active, which is at Ben Nemtin, which is just my name. But I think that's my handle for all socials. I actually do a lot on LinkedIn as well, longer form, and newsletter as well. So you can check all of that out, and I encourage you to write your list and start to talk about it, start to share it. You never know who can help you.
Yeah, Ben, you're an inspiration. Look forward to hearing from you in just a minute here.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks for tuning in to Standard Deviations. If you can't wait till next week for more behavioral finance insights, visit www.orion.com. All opinions expressed by Dr. Daniel Crosby and podcast guests are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinion of or endorsement by Orion and its affiliates, subsidiaries, and employees. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon as a basis for legal, tax, and investment decisions. The opinions are based upon information the participants consider reliable.